is from Florida. Keith Gross is a legal analyst, former assistant state attorney and prosecutor for the state of Florida. He is an author of a new book called Dirt to Runways, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation. Keith, thanks for joining us. You're in Panama City. I used to hang out there. I almost worked at a radio station there. And tell me, do you frequent Pineapple Willie's?
You know, I really don't. I think that's where visitors go, but no, I pretty much eat at home.
You're sensible, but I'd have to say Panama City and Panama City Beach and right up to Pensacola and stuff, absolutely magnificent coastline and views. It's just magnificent. So lovely part of the world, and you're probably still enjoying warm weather. Tell me about your book. What made you write the book? And I need to ask a question after you've told us about that. Do you think the American dream is just slowly vanishing?
Well, I do believe that the American dream is vanishing, and that is largely what drove me to write the book in the first place. The book's just a tale of my growing up. I grew up in the northern Florida area, which has about as many cows as it has people in the area I grew up. It's not down on the beach. Pineapple Willie's was just for visits. We didn't live down there when I was a youngster. So growing up in rural North Florida, I was happy to be raised by a lot of folks that had common sense wisdom, a lot of just obvious things that we should think everyone would agree on. And we don't today. Looking at that clip you played just a moment ago of 2013 BBC, back then they had common sense. Certainly in rural North Florida, when I was growing up, they had common sense as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? One thing, because I lived in the US for a great chunk of my life and always wanted to, and the two reasons. One, if you put your head down and your backside up, the American people supported you. They wanted you to succeed. And I thought that was unique to the US. And secondly, is that you could have a conversation, maybe have a drink or two or whatever, but have that conversation. And when that conversation was finished, it was finished. There was no animosity or ill feeling. Nowadays, you can't, in many places, you look at California, they're doing everything they can now to crunch free speech. That's a pity, because that's what made America so great, was being able to say what was on your mind and then get on with life. And it's changed, hasn't it?
It's definitely changed. The assassination of Charlie Kirk really brought that issue to a head. He was doing the right thing. He was out having conversations with people who had different opinions, and he was changing hearts and minds by having civil conversations. That's the only way that we can come to any sort of policy conclusions in any country, but that's how we do it in America. We have civil discussions with people. It's getting harder to do. It was getting harder for a while, and I think we really reached a turning point with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're going to have to get back to the point where we can have reasonable conversations. It certainly relies on a strong protection for freedom of speech, because we have that here in America, that we have this First Amendment protection, and it wasn't designed to protect kind, polite speech. It was designed to protect speech which others may disagree with. And we have to preserve that, not just here in our country, but worldwide. Freedom of speech is the most fundamental bedrock of being able to air your grievances and come to policy conclusions.
It's amazing how, I just look at the, in California with Gavin Newsom. And same thing in the UK and Australia, we believe in free speech, except when you say something we don't like. And they, if you say a hurty thing, inverted commas, hurty thing, which I saw on X one day describing Starmer's laws in the UK, if you say a hurty thing, then we're going to complain to the police. And if you look at it in the UK, 12,000 per year are arrested because of online posts about saying hurty things. And I always say that the US is still way in front. But if you have those sort of laws that you can't say what's on your mind without threatening to kill someone or to do damage to them, if you can't say what's on your mind, then we are in trouble. And as a part B of that one, by the way, Keith, Pam Bondi said something that alarmed me. She said, we're going to stamp out hate speech. And hate speech is subjective to the person judging it. And I thought that was a fairly dangerous thing. You don't want the US trying to, to do the right thing, inverted commas here, and moving in with hate speech. And then you got another bad actor coming in, another administration coming in and saying, oh, that's bad speech, that's hate speech, and shutting that down. You don't want that. How do we protect ourselves?
Well, in America, our First Amendment does protect hate speech. Hate speech might be vile, but it's still protected speech here. I've seen a lot of reports in the UK of people being arrested for coming out and saying things which are pretty obvious, which is the place is being overrun by migration and they want to see fewer immigrants. That seems like a pretty obvious conclusion from an outsider, and people are being arrested for raising that obvious conclusion in their home country. Fortunately, in the United States, we also have the Second Amendment, where virtually every American citizen is armed. And I think that's really a significant deterrent from a government becoming so tyrannical that they would dare to knock down our door and arrest us for a Facebook post.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I've seen there's a video that's circulating at this. The police rolled up to have a conversation and to arrest a young girl who said something that they didn't like. They said was racist, something. I mean, it wasn't. Anyway, the arresting officer was of that particular race, and it just seemed ironical that. And they had another clip of the UK that a young boy, 6 years old, came home from school, and the mother said, "Oh yes," filming it, quite proud that her child was going to school, and said, "What did you learn at school?" He said, "Did you learn about God?" And the young kid said, "No, you mean Allah. Allah created everything." And that was a normal, it was just a normal, person in the UK with a 5 or 6 year old child off to school. And they've been taught in a Western democracy that Allah was the one that created the universe. Pretty bad, isn't it?
It is surprising. We've seen a fair bit of censorship here in America too, though. Back, if you remember, during COVID, we had doctors that were being stripped of their medical licenses if they dared to speak out against the idea that diapers on your face and plexiglass and untested vaccines were the salvation that it was supposed to be. Even social media accounts were being blocked and taken offline of prominent politicians who dared to question the party narrative on COVID. So certainly there's a reasonable concern that everyone should have when someone comes out and says they're going to stop hate speech or they're going to stop misinformation or establish a ministry of truth. That's Orwellian. We're already going the wrong direction in the world. We need to turn this boat around and get back to the idea of universal freedoms.
In Australia, we had this e-safety thing kicking off in December, and it means that every person has got to use biometrics to look into the phone or to the computer to be able to verify who they are. And that itself is a Pandora's box. I think that's just a disastrous thing. But to see that Europe is excited under von der Leyen, excited that they can also do the same thing, and we'll be watching you. It's a scary world we live in. Just to talk about the rights of people in the US, each state has a sort of a different colour to it. I mean, look at California. They're brought in this new law now. That means, and they rushed it through. That was signed, sealed, and delivered on at the funeral, the day the funeral of Charlie Kirk happened. And it will limit you. It's the same as the UK. They can come and knock on your door. As a prosecutor and practicing law, what chance in hell do they have of making a charge stick? Or can states do what they like and butcher your First Amendment?
No, fortunately, in America, we have all of the rights spelled out by our first several amendments. But then we also have a 14th Amendment, which effectively applies all of the other amendments to the states, not just to the federal government. So we routinely see illogical acts like we're seeing with California, where they try to pass laws which are ultimately going to be struck down in the courts. They do this all the time with respect to gun laws. They'll ban certain types of firearms, and then it's just a matter of time until the Supreme Court strikes that down because it interferes with your Second Amendment right. The same will be true, but much faster with the First Amendment, because the First Amendment is far less controversial and will be protected much faster.
Can you just tell me, because you're a prosecutor for, I don't believe you're still doing it now, but a former state prosecutor for Florida. Obviously, you dealt with bad people. Can you tell me why it took so long to brand Antifa as a terrorist org?
I think we just needed a president willing to come out and speak the truth. Consequences be darned. And that's one thing that we can certainly rely on President Donald Trump to do. He's going to tell it like he sees it. He's not worried about whether or not it offends people. If it needs to be said, he's going to say it. And Antifa has been terrorizing communities, going back for several years now. They were rioting in Portland, Oregon, and destroying buildings. Probably the most complicated thing about declaring them a terrorist organization is that, at least to date, I'm not aware of any clear organizational structure. There must obviously be some organizational structure because they seem to have plenty of money and plenty of time to do things other than work. So I'm hopeful that our government will get to the bottom of that. And, free speech is one thing. Rioting and burning down buildings and burning down cars and blocking highways, that's not free speech. That's criminal activity.
Yeah, and it was seemed to be mainly in those in the blue states, which in many cases, if you looked at the riots, they were supported by those the legislature or the local councils, and it's very hard to prosecute, especially if you're a policeman, to charge someone with a riotous act if they're the ones that are employing you.
Absolutely, we've seen it recently with immigration laws. We've got millions of illegal aliens here in our nation, and the left in our country is really up in arms about the idea that these people should be deported. The law requires that they be deported. The president is following the law, and he's being labeled a fascist and called a Nazi, and they come with all of these terms, which is causing a real outbreak of violence lately, where we have a lot of people who somehow believe that violence is now a righteous act against these Nazi fascists. The use of these dehumanizing words has made violence an acceptable idea for the left. So we've got to find a way for people to accept reality, which is that the president's not doing something wrong by enforcing the law. If you don't like the law, change it, but don't blame the president for enforcing it.
Most things that Donald Trump is doing internally is, and probably eternally too, but is I'm supportive, right up to the top of the jar. I mean, this guy is doing what has been needed to have been done. Internationally, I'm not too sure on that one. I think he's floundering at times. But take away all that, within the US, he's mainly doing the right moves. But your federal budget deficit has grown by from 92 billion to 2 trillion. Is that are the alarm bells ringing, and how do we fix that?
The alarm bells are definitely going off all across both parties. Definitely more concerned people exist on the Republican Party side of things. So you've got a divide even within the Republican Party, where you've got a lot of conservatives, myself included, who want to see serious cuts because we can't afford this much government. That's just the reality. We can't keep taxing our citizens as high as we're taxing them and still spending dramatically more than we're bringing in tax revenue. Our current debt is now $37 trillion and growing. We can't keep doing this. But we don't see a consensus across both parties in Congress on how to get that expense cut down to a more manageable size. Everyone seems to want to lower taxes, but no one seems to want to cancel the government programs funded by those taxes. A lot of people on the Republican side, particularly the conservative Republicans like myself, want to see the federal government shrunk down to size, down to the original mandate as outlaid by our founding fathers, which would have a very small federal government primarily focused on national defense, and it would leave most of the other day-to-day functions, running schools and fire departments and paving roads and such, to the individual states.
Just as we wrap up, because we are running out of time now, your book, it's sort of like an inspirational book on how to use these experiences to move forward. I was always told that the secret of success, there is no secret. It's simply you roll up your sleeves, you put your head down, you bottom up, and you work really, really, really hard, and then you may just get there. Would you agree with that, or do you think, because using your experience, because I've noticed that you were in the National Guard and went to law school after that and so forth, similar story. You put your head down, you bottom up, and you work really, really hard. Any other little bits to add to that?
Well, that was certainly my experience. It was mostly hard work. I mean, nothing was handed to me. I came from a family that had basically nothing and built multiple national companies by delaying gratification, showing up early, staying late, and working hard. There were a lot of things that I probably could have purchased along the way that I didn't, because I reinvested pretty much every dime I made into our businesses until they grew to a national level. I think that delayed gratification, aligning your personal expenditures with your professional objectives, that was really key. And it's not about luck, it's about hard work. If you want luck, work harder. That's what I learned.
I totally agree with you. Do you think when I was at college doing journalism, I had a part-time job at McDonald's, of all places, just to get me through college. And they used to employ a lot of the military. And they said they employed the military because they had these great systems. They knew what to do, and there's a bit of pressure, at Macca's in those days. They'd got lots of customers, but they knew what to do. Do you find that by being with the military, it's also a good reference when things get tough and when you need to put in systems in place, that you can always go back to the basics, and that being the military?
In some respects, yes. I mean, in the Army, you certainly learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You also learn that you succeed as a team. I don't know how many times, when I was in the military, we had a situation where one person on the team would do the wrong thing and everyone had to pay the price. So certainly when you talk about, an organization like McDonald's, a store, if something's going wrong on one side of the restaurant, I suspect everyone else is going to help fix that, because that's what you learn in the military. You learn how to work as a team, solve problems together, and ensure that the mission ultimately succeeds.
Your book, Dirt to Runways, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation, available, I would imagine, at all good and bad bookstores.
Indeed. It's at barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. It is an audiobook on Audible, if you like to listen to books. And you can follow me online at Keith Gross FL.
Absolutely fantastic. Keith Gross, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy this very much. Your book, obviously, it's not a how-to, but it's a book of inspiration, and shows you that anybody can have success. Simply roll up your sleeves, put your head down, you bottom up, do the right thing, and God willing, you will get there. Keith Gross, thank you very much. This is The World Today.